I moved to Wyoming and then Montana in search of work. I'm originally from the East Coast. I've noticed that women in the West marry much earlier than they do here. Additionally, all relocate to larger cities for educational or professional reasons. Additionally, they won't date guys who live further from the cities and can selectively select men using Tinder and other apps. The single women who live in small towns are typically divorced single mothers or gold miners seeking rancher sons' inheritances. The majority are overweight and think they are 8 when they are only 4. Here, dating is extremely difficult. After dating a single mother for 2 weeks, she started talking about marriage, even though I have never been married. She informed me that I would have to adopt her son if we got married. I immediately saw through that and pressed the eject button. When you don't have any children, what are your thoughts on adoption? If she had found the right man to pay child support for a child who wasn't yours in the future, it seems like she would have won. I'm glad you left that single mother when she mentioned marriage. You will be criticized by a lot of people, and they will ask, what are you doing with a single mother in the first place? But when it comes to working in a small town, I get where you're coming from. Women in Canada wear shirts and sweaters made by Northern Reflections with a huge bird called a loon on the front because they are loony themselves because of the social isolation they face in rural areas, which is why I believe that women in such areas marry so young and have children so young because everything is so disjointed and they despise spending so much time alone. Therefore, they must have children to keep them company. If megacities and suburbs were broken up, and everyone got a small farm, women would suddenly be squeezed out, which is one way to raise birth rates. However, if a man does not bring any of his children to the table, suggest that he adopt the children of a single mother. By doing that, a man is ruining his life. If the single mother you were dating had landed you, you would have paid to look after another man's children in exchange for the privilege of having his ex. However, you bring up a more significant issue, which is that attractive women either find rancher sons or move to the cities, leaving behind a lot of unattractive fatties and poor single mothers in rural areas due to the limited dating options there. Because no one wants to marry someone like that. That's one of the reasons why rural communities are disappearing. But I can understand why there aren't many women working in the oil and gas fields in Wyoming or Montana. Therefore, I do not hold you accountable for selecting the most likely and somewhat attractive single mother. However, in all honesty, neither choice makes a man happy. I would do what I would, get your money as soon as possible. I also like that you said that dating apps like Tinder can show men to women that they may be attracted to them. However, they also display his geographical location. Therefore, if he is far from the city, he is in a rural area. Additionally, not all successful women are likely to relocate to areas with abundant male employment opportunities. Wherever women go, men follow. In recent times, that has been to major population centers. Because of this, I think that female empowerment may be contributing to an increase in urbanization around the world. I've previously heard that men moving to the cities for factory jobs enabled the United States and the rest of the world to become urban. That may be true to some extent, but what about women who left urban areas to work as seamstresses and in sweatshops in early 20th century cities? They were aware that staying at home with only farmers for men would be preferable to working in a factory for more money. Due to the high cost of real estate, many young adults in their 20s and 30s are returning to smaller cities or rural areas, but also because they can now work from home. Many of these individuals are refugees from pricey cities. Ask yourself why the hinterlands have so many single mothers. In a large city, they cannot capture a man. As a result, the best they can hope for is a man from out of town like you who wants to settle down with them. There are undoubtedly a lot of guys who fall in love with a rural woman, commit the biggest mistake of their lives, and eventually get married to her. To sweeten the deal, single mothers I've known in many countries had another child with such men to ensure that they stayed with them and that they didn't have to convince the man to adopt their other children. I'm glad you recognize the significant red flag. Power struggles are at the heart of all relationships. Women would rather use love to end the power struggle and simply move you and your resources into the position they desire. As if you were a chessboard pawn, love can send you exactly where they want you because it knocks you out enough. If she asks you to adopt her child, propose to you within 2 weeks, and you start dating her, she is moving quickly. My theory is that she will attempt to ask the same question to the next guy she is dating after you, perhaps after about a month. She will recall how you rejected her and said no. She plans to meet with them and have a girls' night out to talk about her mistakes. Because it's in the country, people tend to call it girls. A night out at the neighborhood country club. A country girl as well. In the country, a single mother is accustomed to manipulating men. They are tough and strong when working the land, but they don't usually have the same intelligence when it comes to women's manipulations. This is probably why they fell for these girls in the first place and made them mothers of one child. I was shown by all the city guys who came to the country that hypergamy means never sleeping. If a man marries such a woman, adopts her children, and stays with her, he will probably spend the rest of his life in the country. As I've mentioned numerous times, women typically want to live close to their circle of female friends and family. So what started as a short to medium-term job in the country working in the oil fields might end up being a life sentence for a single mother in rural Wyoming. It makes it easier for them to control their men. If they find the man they want, many small-town women who move to big cities will try to persuade him to take a similar job in a smaller city in their home state. The women will be able to be closer to their families in this way, and something similar almost happened to me. I turned down an ultimatum to relocate to a much smaller city and ended our relationship. She said she planned to move, but I called her out on her bluff because she wanted to stay with me. I also stated that it was over because I could move with her or it would end. Naturally, she wasn't expecting that response, so she tried to get back together with me after more than a year. I had, however, moved on. One of the main reasons I thought country girls were better was that their attitudes typically made them easier to get along with. That used to be something that only country women had, but now I see it as a result of the fact that most rural women don't get nearly as much toxic education as women who went to college and lived in cities as children. There's a good chance that you didn't go to college if you're a young single mother in the country. However, this is because women with lower levels of education appear to be significantly more pleasant to be around. I guess I've solved Scooby-Doo's mystery about why women in rural areas are generally more pleasant to be around than women in cities. Additionally, women in the country did not have access to the internet during the 1980s and 1990s. They had very little television, if they were farmers. Additionally, due to geographical restrictions, they were unable to see their female friends as frequently, limiting their ability to be influenced by other women. Not to mention that religion was more common than it is today in cities where it is almost non-existent. However, it's odd that so many young single mothers live in more Christian areas than in the big cities. Women may have fewer children when they are less educated. However, it does not appear that women are prevented from riding the farm country carousel by additional small-town religion. It seems to me that the desire for children among women is universal. In the cities, it just looks like that. Additionally, you view it as more socially acceptable if you are a young woman living in the country and are surrounded by women who are single mothers. Also, keep in mind that a single woman doesn't have as many friends as a woman who is in a relationship. People who are married or in a relationship don't want to be around single women. Most of the time, women don't want a single woman with their man. Perhaps that's one of the reasons women are more afraid of being alone than men, because they are emotionally dependent on their female friends and worry that they will lose them. However, if you live in a large city and all of your friends are women and the majority of them do not have children, I believe the opposite may be the case. Because you are so preoccupied with raising your children, you no longer have access to the circle of women you once did. This has already occurred, where let's say 10 women are friends but only one has children. One of the women suddenly stops interacting with the others because she is too busy and feels alone. When another single woman without children sees this, they worry that they will also end up in a similar situation. Therefore, they decide not to have children of their own. In contrast, women used to be afraid of becoming spinsters in previous generations. I believe that the current generation of women is afraid of becoming mothers because it limits their social life in big cities. Naturally, women in the country are catching up quickly. Additionally, only a few states in the United States have birth rates that are higher than the rate of replacement. Utah comes to mind. It almost seems as though our natural disposition causes us to have only two switches in our brains. Either society is overflowing with children or women are infertile. It would appear that striking a balance when it comes to reproduction is difficult. Some will claim that during the 20th century, when couples had 2 or 3 children but were not stable, this occurred. Our history appears to have passed through a brief transitional period. In the 1960s and 1970s, urban populations in Europe began to decline. Populations in the West would be declining just as they had been in Japan, were it not for immigration. I believe that when there is a lot of space around you and the cost of living is low, people tend to have more kids to fill that space. Because of that, I believe that a lot of women in the country may be naturally tempted to have children. My speculation is merely that.